Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class today. We broadcast Monday through Friday, 2 hours, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. John is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli. Captain John Ragan's with us in Texas. Welcome, Captain John Ragan.
Good morning, Vincent.
Hey, good morning, John. You know, John, just a few-minute opener here. You know how fortune cookies and Dove chocolates, when you open them up, have little sayings on them? Well, I have a Dove chocolate wrapper here, and it says, "Dare to cross the line." Okay, I'm up for it. So here we go. You know, the world is crazy. Locals pelted a mama elephant with rocks while she was giving birth. Politicians are taxing rain in New Jersey. On the West Coast, politicians want to compost deceased humans. Smoking dope is becoming legal where it was previously illegal. Dope factories are springing up across America. Instead of collecting items and enjoying hobbies, people are now collecting likes. Me first is now today's mantra. I deserve to be happy is what millennials believe, and people from everywhere are jumping the fence with impunity from politicians. If you want to change your birth gender, you may. If you want to switch back, you may. You may want the top half to be male and the bottom half to be female. That's okay. If you want to be perverted and be a mayor, that's okay. Heck, you can even run for president if you want. Up is down. Wrong is now right. White is wrong. Queers are in fashion. And the GDP is bringing us all down. I have a press release. The authors are unknown at this time. Dateline, 2019, April 1, Richmond, Virginia. The governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia today put his signature on a controversial new bill, which will permit abortion of children up to age 30 months. Supported by Planned Parenthood, under the new law, mothers can take their baby to any Planned Parenthood clinic in the state where the procedure will be undertaken. The child will be made to be comfortable, and then under a doctor's supervision, their spine will be severed. Medical staff will be in attendance to harvest the viable body tissue and organs. Asked if the bill was humane, the governor was quoted as saying, "The government shouldn't be involved in these type of decisions, and legislators shouldn't be telling women what to do." A Virginia legislative review of the bill estimates that the fiscal impact for the procedure will be zero to negligible, as most of the medical costs will be covered by the recumbent revenue generated from body part sales. Women's reproductive groups supporting the governor's action hail the new law as a step forward for single mothers and families burdened by their lifestyle by having too many children. Those opposed to the bill expressed concern that it could lead to further liberalization of the country's abortion laws and may spread to the retired community for the redeployment of their organs to replace the ones that the millennials themselves damaged with street drugs and alcohol. Investment banks laud the decision as a boon for organ harvesting clinics and human composting companies that will begin producing organic fertilizer and bone meal for sustainable organic vegetable farming. International fast food restaurants have expressed interest in recycling body fluids and connective tissue as a way of combating Burger King's incredible meatless lab-grown burgers. That's the end of the press release. Class, that's tongue-in-cheek. The authors are unknown at this time. But what they're saying, what these authors are saying, is we have gone inside out. Absolutely crazy across the world. We're talking about harvesting organs. We're talking about eugenics. We're talking about lab-grown hamburgers. We're talking about abortion of fully developed humans. Murder. That's where we are. Captain John, any comments before we begin today?
And you better not say anything against it or you'll be censored.
Yeah, absolutely right. So I'm at thefinancialstateoftheunion.com, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com, and I'm at the news tab. And here we go. John,
at
please
the top of the list.
Yeah,
at the top of the list today.
1 plus 1.
1 plus 1 equals 100. And and those that know me know that I'm really good at math. In fact, the first majors at both the undergraduate and graduate levels were mathematics. And the first time I took the GRE, I believe I scored 790. Worst was 780. I don't have the record anymore, but it was 99th percentile, meaning that I scored better than 99% of the people applying to graduate school using the GRE exam that year. So you think I might be a little crazy. Yeah, everybody knows 1 plus 1 equals 2. And when we're talking about just ordinary numbers, that's true. But what we're going to talk about this morning is biology and the synergistic effects of toxins. Now, to get this into the proper context, I need to talk about a term. I've talked about it before, some time ago. It's called lethal dose, abbreviated LD, and it ends up with a number after it. LD 50 means that 50% of the test subjects, these are lab animals, often lab mice or rats. LD 50 means 50% of them die, so if you have 100 mice, 50 mice die. LD of 1 means that just 1% die. And you'll see that in a number of studies. What you don't see very often is what happens when you combine 2 or more of these toxins. It creates what's called the synergistic effect. They work in conjunction with each other. And using a study from 1978, this paper talked about how an LD1 dosage of mercury combined with an LD1 dosage of lead, and actually it was less than an LD1 dosage, but we're trying to make it simple here, resulted in the death of 100% of the lab rats, an LD100. So we have an LD1 plus LD1 equals LD100. Now, to be totally fair, these animal studies do not directly correlate to humans. There's things that they can ingest that humans can't, and vice versa in various doses. For example, we humans can consume chocolate. and usually find that rather pleasurable. However, if you feed your dog too much chocolate, they die. So that's why you can't just take it as a direct correlation. Right now, it's currently frowned upon to perform such lab tests on humans, starting with the tongue-in-cheek. At some point that might change. In Nazi Germany, they definitely used humans for experiments. However, in the meantime, even though this is not done in a laboratory setting, many of the products we consume or are injected into us are creating these synergistic effects in our body. So we are the guinea pigs in this experiment. And also keep in mind that here we're talking about death. You've had so much of the toxin that it instills death. There's levels below that. Sometimes you've had so much of the substance that whatever damage is being caused is permanent. Sometimes it's reversible, and some toxins get eliminated from the body. However, some toxins are retained, and you end up with cumulative effects. The point I'm trying to make is when you read about the result of safety studies, the individual substance may be safe as advertised, but when you combine it with other ingredients, the results can be damaging to your health and even result in death. Now, I've included some links in this article. The first is where we talk about lethal dose, and I'm going to spend a few minutes in there. It's very interesting just how toxic some things are. The second link talks about the synergistic effects and includes a reference to that study. Reference number 1 is the Schubert study from 1978. And the remaining 2 articles just add a little bit more support for your reading pleasure. So we'll talk about toxicity when we get back.
Captain John Regan's with us, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. Please click on the News tab. Captain John Regan's with us, and class, I just have a quick update. I received a communique from the chief radio engineer at Genesis Communications Network, and he will be removing all of USA Prepare's owned commercials on USA Prepare's, the broadcast. So 6 minutes of commercials will be deleted from the future broadcast, but it's going to take about a week or two to make that happen. So I own those commercials, those time slots, and I've decided that in the interest of getting more programming to you, that we would delete all those commercials. So it'll be just 6 minutes fewer commercials from USA Prepares. And it will not affect our affiliates. John Regan?
So I'm on a Wikipedia article, Median Lethal Dose, which talks about the LD50, 50% acute poisoning of various substances. And there's a table that starts out with some of the lesser toxic substances, and the top of the list is water. And for a rat taken orally, can have over 90,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight before half of the rats die. And we think of water as being pretty safe, and it really is, but you can overdo it. In fact, years ago we had a case here in Dallas where a fraternity did hazing with water, and unfortunately the guy died. because when you ingest too much water, you flush out your electrolytes, and without the electrolytes, your body does bad things like die. The next few items, kind of interesting, and these dosages range from just under 30,000 milligrams per kilogram to about 10,000 milligrams per kilogram. So the top of this group, the sucrose, the table sugar, glucose, those are 25, 29, 30,000 area. MSG is about half of that, 16,600. Stevia, which is in the stevia sweetener, 15,000. Vitamin C, which I think a lot of us take, and it's something that our body needs, taken orally for a rat, 11,900 milligrams per kilogram is the 50% lethal dosage. Then right above vitamin C is glyphosate. And it's really pretty close to vitamin C in its toxicity, 10,537 milligrams per kilogram. And this is for a rat who've taken glyphosate orally. Now, this is where they try to tell you that glyphosate is safe. It's not going to harm you. Well, in the acute lethal dosage, yeah, it's one of the safer things. What they don't talk about is how these substances, including glyphosate, affect your gut microbiome. And Monsanto has patented glyphosate for use as an antibiotic. And what does an antibiotic do? Kills bacteria. What's your gut microbiome? It's bacteria. So while it may take a pretty good dosage of glyphosate for acute toxicity, it's kind of skewing the damage that it does to especially mammals that have this gut microbiome. Rounding out this group, lactose and aspartame. And I think you'll find some of the items on the list rather interesting when we get back.
Interesting for sure. Terrifying. At least. We'll be right back. Very serious broadcast class with Captain John Ragan, the financial state of the union.com. John, please continue.
So we were talking about some of the lesser toxic substances. And the last four were vitamin C, glyphosate, lactose, and aspartame. They're all roughly the same. So you really have to consume a lot of those to cause yourself to have the acute toxicity where you immediately die. But climbing up the list, above that a few steps, is ethanol, which is the drinking alcohol. And then more toxic than that is the methanol, also known as wood alcohol. What's interesting on this item, where many of the references are on rats, methanol uses the human dosage, which is 810 milligrams per kilogram for an LD50 of methanol in humans. Now, what I think is more interesting than that is you look a few items down, and now fructose, which we have talked about a number of times, is more toxic than methanol. And we've talked about how it does essentially the same damage to the liver that drinking alcohol does, just without the effects on the brain. And I found it interesting to find it on the list in that general vicinity. And more toxic than fructose, sodium chloride. We also know that as table salt, something that we do need. Without it, we die. But you take too much of it. And for a rat, the dosage is 3,000 milligrams per kilogram. So it's still rather high, but we're working our way down the list to the more toxic substances. And then a few steps above that, CBD, the cannabidiol oil that people love to use. It's almost as toxic as metallic arsenic, and right above that is ibuprofen. And how many times do you pop an ibuprofen without even thinking twice? Many of the NSAIDs out there, we're finding that there are more and more negative effects on the body and the gut microbiome than we really know about. And right above ibuprofen is formaldehyde. Going further down the list, right above ketamine is aspirin. And that's now down to a dosage for rats of 200 milligrams per kilogram. And almost to that level, just 192, is caffeine. And how many times have you taken a couple of aspirin and downed some caffeine? Then a form of arsenic, arsenic trisulfide, is in that same general vicinity. Now, a few steps up from there is uranium, taken orally by mice. 114 is the dosage, which is pretty close to cocaine at 96. A bit above cocaine is one of our favorite discussion items on USA Prepares, sodium fluoride. And that only takes 52 milligrams per kilogram to kill 50% of the rats. Above sodium fluoride, mercury chloride. Above mercury is vitamin D3. And, I know a number of us take that. I take the 50,000 units once a week that Dr. Shealy recommends. But if you take 37 milligrams per kilogram for a rat, vitamin D3 will kill half of them. And that's not too terribly far off from heroin at 21.8 and LSD at 16.5. And as you work your way up, metallic arsenic, 13. And just above that is nicotine. For a mouse, it's 3.34. For a human taken orally is the 6.5 to 13 milligram per kilogram range. And that's roughly the same as sodium cyanide. Nicotine is a very toxic substance. And getting into the really toxic things, strychnine. For humans, just 1 to 2 milligrams per kilogram taken orally. Plutonium, intravenous for a dog, 320 micrograms. We're now getting down to really small amounts. Fentanyl, which is in the news a lot for a monkey, 300 milligrams. Sarin, injected for a mouse, 172 micrograms. VX, nerve gas. This is human oral inhalation, absorption through skin, eyes, estimated at 140 micrograms per kilogram. And there's still more toxic things above that. We've got ricin for rats in the 20s. Continuing down, polonium-210, which has been used for assassinations, inhalation, 10 nanograms per kilogram. and above that, the botulism toxin, Botox, 1 nanogram per kilogram, and above that, ionizing radiation, human radiation 5 grays, and that's where this list ends. Obviously, it's not all inclusive, but it's very interesting because some things that we think are fairly safe actually have a fair amount of toxicity to them, and this is just the individual item. And as I started the discussion, we were talking about synergistic effects of things like mercury and lead. One of the articles talks about the synergistic effects of mercury and aluminum, and think about some of the things that's in vaccines. So, you could probably have quite a few shows just talking about these toxins and the synergistic effects of them and the effects on our health. Vincent?
I was listening intently, and I was going down the list with you. And you mentioned caffeine, and you mentioned aspirin. Class, there is a product that you can buy over the counter that combines those two ingredients. It's called Anacin. Anacin's been around for years. Anacin. Comes in a yellow box over the counter. The combination of aspirin and caffeine. John, you mentioned, as you're going down the list, one of the items was melamine, melamine. And melamine and melamine-related compounds have been found in products labeled as wheat gluten and rice protein concentrate, imported from China. These products were used as ingredients in some pet foods. And they killed my dog. Not TJ, but a dog that we had in Virginia. Brahms was her name. Golden Retriever. Melamine and its related compounds are not approved for use in ingredients for animal or human food. But the Chinese sneak it in. So we have to be extremely vigilant and extremely careful. And, John, this list is something that everybody should look at because it will wake you up as to what you should be very careful about eating. Metallic arsenic is on this list. Metallic arsenic. Now, you all know arsenic is a killer, right? Well, it's really close to heroin and LSD and nicotine and sodium cyanide and hydrogen cyanide on this list. It's close to strychnine. It's close to plutonium. It's close to fentanyl. John, how do you suggest that our class take a look at this list? What is the way that you'd like them to do that? It's called the median, MEDIAN, lethal dose, LD50.
Well, if you click into my article, the 1 + 1 = 100, which I posted on my website, you get down a paragraph where it says the term you need to add is lethal dose. That lethal dose is a link which will take you to this article where you can peruse that table.
Mm-hmm. And LD50 means 50% of the subjects, the test subjects, will die. Now, that doesn't mean that you will die, but it might mean that you will die. You know, 1 of 2 will die with an LD50 dose, 1 out of 2. It's as simple as that. 5 out of 10, 50 out of 100, 500 out of 1,000. That's what it means. John, please continue. This is quite sobering.
Yeah, as I said, the 50 that survive, you don't know what their health condition is what kind of damage that they've endured. And at lower dosage rates, there might be fewer or no deaths, but still health effects. So a lot to consider on that topic, and that's part of what we and Dr. Shealy and others do.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Shealy's talked about, you can take a lot of poison and die right away, or you can take it slowly and die slowly. It's as simple as that. Captain John Regan and I will be right back. I mentioned melamine in pet food. My research shows us that at least 3,600 deaths to animals has been caused by melamine in pet food, including our dog. Ron in California, welcome. You're on with Captain John Regan.
Hello. I've been focusing on this issue for students when they're the vaping or the aerosol products that are put out in the e-cigarette or e-liquid smoking. And the reports have been recent that 27.7% coming out of CDC reports mid and high school usage. Now, that's just recent, in recent years. And my problem here is, where are the reports on the potential bioaccumulation of the toxins in it and of the nicotine addiction that they're having? And what effects are the next generation of young people who will come in following the role models of the users today? And where is the report on the future of the bioaccumulative toxins and the cancer causation from the toxins in the cigarette, and of course the toxin of nicotine itself, and the cost to our healthcare position as these students go older and continue to use the product and manifest in years to come the bioaccumulation of the toxins and the disease and cancer that will have an effect on our entire healthcare system? Where is this in place? Where's the benefit to the economy of this product being sold versus the cost to the entire nation of healthcare?
Ron, you know that the tobacco industry has been genetically engineering tobacco to be more and more and more addictive, so that you absolutely positively cannot quit. The tobacco industry worked with the federal government during World War II to ship cigarettes to our servicemen. And the idea was to get them hooked on free cigarettes so that when they came back from the war, there would be an army and a navy and an air corps of addicted customers. That's what they
Lucky
did.
Strikes. Lucky Strikes and Camels, Lucky Strikes, from green
LS,
to white packaging.
LS, MFT, Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. More doctors recommend Camel than any other. Tareyton, for your taste zone. Yeah, I mean, all of this nonsense and all of these CEOs from the tobacco industry lying to Congress about cancer and how cancer is not caused by smoking. Nonsense.
Let me interject something here. You're 100% right, obviously. History notes that. But in this recent years, with the technology coming out of Silicon Valley and interacting with one of the biggest cigarette companies who also produced successfully children's sugared drinks, they're merging together, which put out one product. I'm not going to name the product, but has 70% of the market out of San Francisco. And
let's name the product. You're talking about a bag of juice, correct? Capri Sun?
No, a bag of juice was originally marketed successfully, which was Tang and Kool-Aid, by a cigarette company who put it out as the 60s evolved, and they were so successful, they got together with the technology that was being produced in the San Francisco area, which was the products that would eventually became the vaping products, which now have 70% of the market of the vaping products and 27.7% of mid and high school students addicted, who are the role models for the next generation. My question is, what are we going to do about the cost of all the disease factors and cancer that will manifest themselves in years to come because of the bioaccumulation in the body of these young people today and the next generation of users who are now hooked? People are hooked for life. some of these children. And how many are coming on board? When I give you 27.7%, that's a government stat. That doesn't mean the actuality, because that's over a year old. So we're talking about a real effect on the healthcare system.
Ron, I can hear the passion in your voice. I can hear the anger. I can hear the concern. And we're with you. Would you like to stay through the break and John Regan can have a chance to respond? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Ron, you're hitting the nail right on the head. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Captain John Regan's with us. And class, we were talking with Ron in California, and I mentioned Capri Sun. Tobacco giants such as Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds use the marketing playbook, the cigarette marketing playbook, to promote sugary drinks as good for children. Okay? They started, R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris started buying up beverage companies, and they started marketing these sugary drinks to children using the same tactics that they use for marketing cigarettes. The same additives used in cigarettes to control their color and flavor work in beverages. That's what the tobacco executives of the companies realized. So they went after your children. Captain John Regan, any comments?
Well, don't forget that they soak tobacco in sugar for cigarette purposes. So that's another piece of the puzzle there. And, yeah, it's a horrific, the general analysis that you do is, number one, follow the money, because that's usually the easier path to follow and easier to talk to most people about. There's the secondary level, actually might be the primary when you get behind the scenes, is the spiritual warfare aspect. And this is all about killing off the useless eaters so that the elite can have the resources for themselves. Mm-hmm. And
Ron, any quick comments before we move on?
A quick comment is that let's transcend from cigarettes. These same people who manufactured the sugar-flavored drinks, which basically junk food, they let's use the word, they colluded with the people who had the labs that created the vaping products. There's no such thing as vaping. It's not water mist. It is aerosol, just like hairspray would be. You can't smell it. That's why it's in classrooms. It's all over. Talk to some of these high school and mid-school students and ask them the questions. This product, they got together and they marketed to children specifically flavored e-cigarette products. And then they got off. And when they told the FDA, oh, we didn't intend to market to children. Well, they had all that history of success in marketing to children with the sugar-flavored drinks. They just put the flavoring in this new vaping product. Now, the question is, when you got 27.7% of mid and high school students already in use, and that's government stats, and that is probably less than reality, the point is this. Who is going to pay for the future? I mean, I'm on this phone with you because a fellow in San Francisco who's really pretty active on phones, David, he'll push it forward because he was in support of the knowwhat'sinit.org project that students are working on, and that's in development. We want to know what the future is in the cancer causation of the contents of these products, as well as the nicotine, which is a carcinogen itself, and the height of the stoning and the modification of that to the degree that you can get a greater high from an advanced product and the chemicals in it that heat it to really manifest that. And the next generation of young people who are role models into that product, this is a lifelong addiction, and this is a constant product. Now they're going to change it from 18 to 21. And what difference is that going to make in the long run if kids under 18 already are using the product in mid and high schools?
Ron, I can tell you for a fact that I know a guy that used to smoke, and he's an adult. And he used to smoke cigarettes at the frequency that most did, maybe 1 or 2 packs a day. Mm-hmm. But ever since he switched to vaping, this atomized vapor, this addictive vapor, he cannot stop. That thing, he's huffing and puffing on that like almost almost every other breath. I kid you not.
Well, you're on.
Ron, I'll
top
tell you
of
what
it.
I'd like you.
Yes, sir.
I'll tell you what I'd like you to do. Would you please give your phone number to our engineer? I will call you off the air and schedule some time for you to come on the air with me. Would you like to do that?
Staying to the facts and knowing the subject, I would be happy to do that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to put you on hold, and I'm going to ask John, our engineer, to take your phone number, and he will communicate to that number to me. If not, call back another time and leave your number for me, and the engineers will give it to me, okay? So I'm going to put you on hold. Ron, thank you very much. John, back to you.
Well, because of that, let me just transition into the national death spiral, because there's some ramifications there. And those that have heard me, this is really nothing new. This article says we have 3 years before the national death spiral. And what is, I think, a stunning takeaway from this, and there's a link inside this article to a publication from the Debt Management Office of the U.S. Treasury. So you can go in and actually get the document from the government, which includes the graphic that is in this article. And it's not the easiest thing to explain, and I may have to put together a video to do so. But what it shows is that by 2024, according to this projection done by the Treasury, what they bring in taxes will not be enough to cover debt service. Now, when you can't cover the debt service, that means there is no money for defense. There's no money for anything else. And we're just talking about, what about the costs of the vaping and all that? Hey, forget about it. There are no costs. People are just going to die. So if you think it's just my opinion on what's coming in a very short period of time, hopefully this article and the document from the U.S. Treasury will serve as a wake-up call. Did you want to discuss that before we move on? Vincent?
I'm sorry, John, I was on the phone with our engineer while you were doing that. Please continue.
Okay. So let me back up the link that I had before that, but we have a video of your guilt. And we've seen this technology evolve. It used to be, if something was in writing, you knew it might not be true, but, if somebody published a book, they at least went to some effort to do that. As that became cheap, then, we looked at things like audio and photographs, but then the technology came along to where you could modify photographs and where you could generate audio so that it sounds like a person's voice. They then were able to have the software and computing power to do the same thing with video, so you could create a fake video. And this just ratchets that up another step. They now have software where, using just one photograph, they can then generate basically a moving video of the person. And the more photographs they have, the more resolution and lifelike it looks like. So just imagine they take this, and even at one photograph, it's decent for internet, publication. And combined with, the sound of your voice, and they can basically have you confess to anything. And how do you prove that it's not you doing that? Vincent?
Absolutely terrifying. I was listening intently to what you were saying. And my thought was, okay, we get one photograph, we generate the video, we put you in a place that you haven't been, or we have, as you said, confess to a crime that you didn't even know about, let alone do, and it's going to be impossible for us to compete with that because we don't have the technology unless what we do is we get a video or an image of the prosecutor and the judge, and we put them together, and then we say, well, yeah, we understand that, but you guys were at the same meeting, and here's what you guys said. I mean, maybe that's what we have to do.
That might be the only defense you can do, is to get that, benefit of the doubt.
Well, actually put them at the crime scene with the gun, or with the polonium, or with the uranium, or with the Zyklon B, or put them in a lab making it, or have the video generated of them being the pedophiles that they really are. I mean, that's going to be the only way that we can fight this. So I guess we just put them on notice.
But do you think it's vicious now with the censorship and the deplatforming and the banking restrictions? Just wait till they start using this. And I don't know how soon this technology would be ready for, one for the masses. But before that, you'll have the corporations and governments that will have it. This might be ready for the next election cycle, and maybe they'll have Donald Trump with space aliens plotting to take over the world. Who knows?
Well, I can tell you, I can't give you the details without her permission, but Guineith Isaacs, a USA Preparedness instructor, has been targeted, and she has been prevented from selling products on the internet in Australia because of some of the things that she says. She has literally been shut down for selling bona fide products. I mean, normal things that people sell all the time on Craigslist here in the United States. She's been prevented from doing that by the banks. Captain John Ragan is with us, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. John, please continue.
I'm going to try to get through break-even point, and people are dumber now, this segment, so we can spend the last half hour on space weather. And if you think that the toxins were interesting, fasten your seatbelt. Break-even point is something I learned about as a 16-year-old. It's part of the Junior Achievement Program. I was elected treasurer of my Junior Achievement Company. And what this analysis does is show how many units you need to sell in order to make a profit. And in the Junior Achievement Company, it's very simplified as opposed to doing this with a real world company, because the Junior Achievement Company typically just had one product. So you had the cost of that product, you had the price of the product, so you pretty much could nail this analysis. You have certain fixed costs, and when you're in business, this is things like your rent. You can also include the personnel costs. You know what you have to do to run the business. You've got variable costs, and when you have a product-type business, that would include the cost of the product and certain things. So when you take those fixed costs, and there's a nice chart in there that's a certain level, and you'd be doing this for a year because that's how we report our financial condition. Then you stick the variable costs on that, so you've got a total of the fixed plus variable. Now, until you sell something, you've got $0 coming in. And as you ramp that up, you've got a line going from 0 to, whatever the cost of the product is for the slope. And at some point, that revenue line will intersect the total cost line, and that is the break-even point. So once you reach that point, that's where you start earning profit. Now, this gets to be important in several ways. It seems like people have forgotten this very basic concept. We have companies out there, and they're many of these are the internet companies, which we're getting ready to have the tech crash too come up, that they don't have any profit. They're never going to have any profit. And why people put money into these companies is beyond me. But you've got, even within some of these companies, and let's take a more established company, we talk about problems with retail. Yes, there's a lot of different products the stores sell, but it's the same basic concept. You have to sell a certain amount until you cover your costs, and then you make money. Well, that may be true for a company, but now you have to get down to the store level as well. That store has fixed costs. You have the variable costs involved with that store. And if that store doesn't sell enough items to cover that, then that store is operating at a loss. And this gets into the big problem that we're seeing because of e-commerce. When you take away even a small fraction of those store revenue amount, you now have reduced a lot of those stores to the point where they cannot make a profit. And this is what we're seeing more and more. And as that e-commerce grows, you're going to see more and more problems with stores. And I even read a discussion where what some stores are doing is cutting back on variety of inventory. And, people go to the store, they can no longer get the product they wanted to get. So they drive away from the store disgusted, and they've driven these customers to go online to get the product they want, which is further going to put this retail death spiral in play. I think companies like Walmart, going from the brick and mortar up, will probably do okay as Amazon goes the other way from the e-commerce to making more.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Captain John Regan's with us. John, you were mentioning brick and mortar versus Amazon when we went into a break.
Right. Sorry, I didn't get the feed, so I didn't know that was upon us. Basically, you have the two sides working to accomplish the same thing. Walmart and Amazon, both are working to have warehouses, at least in the metro areas, to service the bulk of the population. And their goal is, quite often same-day delivery. And as this whole thing progresses, those warehouses are going to be highly automated, and the delivery is going to eventually be by drones, whether that's air drones or land drones. So, if you're a person working in stores, I feel sorry for you. You might have a little time left, but I would say that the writing's on the wall. And I think that wraps up that. Did you want to discuss that one any further?
No, that's great. And I've been mentioning that we're getting dumber by the minute, and you wanted to talk about that. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Right. There's a study that just came out. The world is getting increasingly dumber. And what the study found is IQ scores are going down, and there was some thought that this may be caused by migration, but that was disproved because it's even happening within families. Now, it doesn't go deeply into the reasons for that, and there's probably multiple reasons, I think part of it goes back to the introduction of fluoride into the water, and for me that happened in the early 60s in my hometown. Then you get beyond that, you think about, I guess it was the 70s when glyphosate started being used, and that usage has shot up, and that affects the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome affects the brain. That's probably an effect. And then basically, I guess, starting in the 90s and really accelerating the use of cell phones where we're irradiating our brains. And we could probably add several more items. And I would say it's probably a combination of all of those. And you combine that with lousy school systems that are now indoctrination centers. And if you think people are dumber, this study says you are correct, Vincent.
No question in my mind. Absolutely no question. I have decided that as a New Year's resolution, I would reduce my tolerance. I would reduce my tolerance. And yesterday I was at a parking lot, and Walmart was associated with this parking lot in Springfield. I stopped at a four-way stop. It was my turn to go ahead. Everybody was supposed to stop at all entrances to this intersection. And so I stopped and proceeded into the intersection, and a millennial female driver just drove right through her stop sign, cut me off in the middle of the intersection. I had to do a 10-second horn test to see if my horn worked as well as I had hoped it would. And that's what's happening every day. So we are me first. We are not paying attention. We are dumb as a box of rocks, and it's getting worse. You're absolutely right.
On to the space weather section for today. I have 5 links there. 3 of them are videos. The 2 videos on space weather health are like 2.5 to 3 minutes, so they're short videos. The one on what's missing from the climate models is a 40-minute video, and if you don't have time for that, watch the area from around 12.5 to 16.5 minutes, and in those 4 minutes, you'll at least learn enough, and I'll do my best to discuss it on the radio. It's much easier if you have the chart in front of you where you can see this. But starting off, a lot of people don't even know there's a link between space weather and health. And that first link shows some of the different areas. There's different types of space weather. You have radiation from proton storms. You have solar flares. Quite often there's an overlap in what it can affect. So with the radiation, the proton storms, these can induce heart problems, dysrhythmia, even heart attack. It can affect your mental condition, which it can include suicide, anxiety, depression. It can affect other parts of the body. And if you think about how we just thought about ordinary weather, people that had arthritis or something, would say, they know a storm's coming. Well, it's the same thing with space weather. It can affect arthritis, lupus, and your epidermal and glandular systems. So if you have those problems, those can be enhanced during that time frame that the radiation storms are going on. For all life, it can increase the risk of seizures, migraines, and other disorders. And if you're flying in an airplane, you also get increased radiation when you've got severe storms. Solar flares are the same with the psychiatric and immune areas. And it can also, for other life, have visual impairment, reaction time diminished. So it's not just that your imagination. These things are real. There are studies going on. It's not out there into the general public yet. So even people that have gone through university in these study areas, if they have not graduated recently, they might not even know some of these things. So this puts you ahead of the curve. The bad thing is, there's not a whole lot we can do to protect ourselves from space weather. Now, when it comes to the health risks, if you know you have a health condition, and Suspicious Observers does have an app where you can be alerted if certain space weather issues occur. Maybe you just want to be careful, make sure that you stay on top of any medication you may be on. But outside of that, just being aware, maybe be more tolerant. That's about all you can do with that. Now, beyond that, it gets to be switching over to the climate side. Again, as far as I know, we have nowhere near the science or technology to mitigate maybe some of this, but certainly not all of it. Now, I am actually have that video up, see what you're missing from the climate models, and have it paused at the 1347 point so I can discuss it. When you hear about the climate models that we're killing ourselves, it's caused by humans and carbon dioxide, they do include the sun in those models. However, all they include is solar luminescence, which would include the ultraviolet radiation, and luminescence does not change very much. So as far as these scientists are concerned, the sun does not have any climate forcing, so it's not a part of climate change. Now, the ultraviolet radiation is part of the electromagnetic wave portion produced by the sun. What they are ignoring is X-ray radiation, which also heats the atmosphere. The sun also produces electromagnetic fields, and these electromagnetic fields induce currents. And when you start learning more about the electrical nature of the Earth, that gets into our weather, including things like hurricanes and tornadoes, which have an electronic component. Even the normal storm systems, the lows and highs are electrical fields on the Earth. The sun also has solar wind, where protons and electrons are pushed out. And that couples with the magnetosphere and the ionosphere. And again, that gets into vertical column pressure. Well, the Earth's magnetic field is weakening. So these effects are going to be enhanced. And if the Earth's magnetic field disappears as the magnetic field reverses, and if you've been following how the North Pole has been traveling, it's suggesting that there's a good chance it's going to happen during our lifetime, and we don't have a record of exactly what happens. And even if we did have a good record of that, we don't have it with our level of technology, which is reliant on electricity. And we've talked a lot about what happens if the electrical grids around the world go down. But that's just our sun. The other part of this is cosmic rays. These are electromagnetic particles coming in. Well, there are some produced locally, but there's others produced from outside our solar system. You'll get high-energy protons and electrons and high-energy nuclei. These affect different parts and also contribute to climate issues, and we'll talk about that when we get back.
Captain John Regan's with us, class. If you want to find more information about today's broadcast, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. Please click on the News tab. In the coming weeks, class, we should have fewer commercials on USA Prepares. I'm looking forward to that. John Ragan, you mentioned something about the sun's involvement in climate change. Could you repeat that one more time very quickly? What is the sun's involvement in climate change?
Well, there's a number, but let me get to the last article on there, cosmic rays increasing, and I think this will really drive home the point.
Great.
This article from March of last year, and Dr. Tony Phillips, who wrote this article, is the production editor of Science at NASA, and the paper that he's talking about was published in the journal Space Weather by a professor from the University of New Hampshire. So, these aren't, bloggers in mommy's basement. These are, people with PhDs in the field talking about this. Cosmic rays are increasing, and talked about the series Where Are We on Suspicious Observers. We've got the Earth's magnetic field getting weaker, which is allowing more space weather in. We have our sun getting weaker, which is allowing more weather coming in from outside our solar system, specifically cosmic rays. And we are, as a solar system, moving out of a cloud into a void, which that magnetic cloud has been protecting us. So now we're going to get even more radiation from outside of our solar system. We've just not experienced this, at least not during human time on Earth. Now, close to the end of this article, how does this affect us? Well, a number of ways. Cosmic rays penetrate commercial airlines, dosing passengers and flight crews so much that pilots are classified by the International Commission on Radiological Protection as occupational radiation workers. Research shows that cosmic rays can see clouds and trigger potentially altering weather, climate. Also, there's studies which they link to there, linking cosmic rays with cardiac arrhythmias in the general population. So cosmic rays, it's one part of this puzzle that is not being included in our climate models. It's not the CO2, and the cosmic rays are increasing. We expect them to get worse, and it affects our health and our climate. And I would expect that we start seeing more and more horrific storms because these things are electrical in nature. And until mainstream scientists get off the government bus and start getting up to date on current science, you're just going to see more and more idiot legislation, which again, they'll follow the money and the spiritual warfare side. They want to control us, and controlling carbon, which controls energy, controls our lives. That's what they're trying to do, when the reality is space weather is what's causing the problems. Vincent.
John, what you're saying, I'm reading between the lines, we're now saying that pilots, flight attendants, and those who fly frequently are radiation workers. Is that right?
Just like you worked in a nuclear power plant or with, X-ray equipment. You're a radiation worker.
Mm-hmm. Class, think about that. I don't want to fly anywhere. And I've resisted it for years. Actually, I haven't flown for years. And I won't do it. If I can't get there under my own vehicle, I'm not going. I'm not going by bus. I'm not going by train. I'm not going by plane. I'm not going by Uber or Lyft. And if I can't get there behind the wheel I'm not going. And you may want to consider the same thing. You may want to stay out of airplanes, whether it be a Piper Cub, Cherokee, a Navajo, or something that flies higher. Captain John Regan, what you delivered today in class was absolutely brilliant. Each time you're on, you outdo the last time you're on, which outdid the previous time you're on. It is terrifying. The information that you're bringing to us is critical to know. Please share this broadcast with friends and family, class. Captain John Regan, I thank you so much for being my friend and being a senior USA preparedness instructor. Let's do it again and again.